Good morning. I'm moored just south of Preston Bagot, which is 5 miles south of Lapworth, and in those 5 miles are 17 locks, so fairly closely spaced. However, I have got 2 days to do them, so that is absolutely fine. It's considerably cooler today. There were supposedly lots of thunderstorms in the country overnight, though none round here, but it is definitely cooler. So hopefully I'll do, 10 of the locks today, 7 of the locks tomorrow, and then on Saturday I'll be doing the Hatton Lock flight, for which I am enlisting some crew, but more about that in a later vlog. There are just 2 more vlogs left from my grand 2017 cruise, including this one. Very soon I'd be back on a mooring in the Midlands, where I'd stop over the summer and do some DIY. The first lock here had me waiting while another boat came down. Nice timing, as that meant it would be set for me and the gate left open. While I waited, I could peer at this old-looking house. Sometimes it's hard to know if they're the real thing or a modern mock-up, but by the looks of this, I suspect it's genuine. Here's the other boat coming through the lock, but there was almost immediately a problem for me. As I began to move off, the gearbox made a horrid noise, a classic sign of something wrapped around the propeller. I hoped to free it by a blast of reverse, as this sometimes does the job. But not this time. The lack of thrust meant I was drifting, and you also lose practically all steering. No, I had definitely no engine power here, and with the boat now drifting under a long bridge, I leapt off and pulled the boat frantically with a rope to give it enough momentum to get under the bridge and into the lock, so I could sort things out on the other side. Once the nose of the boat edged through, I could pull it again on the centreline and get the boat to the lock. Rather than fix it there, as there was someone else coming, I raised the boat and then bow-hauled it out. The problem turned out to be nothing more than some particularly troublesome leaves which hadn't blown off when I hit reverse, and that is unusual. Undaunted, I carried on. One of the many pleasures of the South Stratford Canal is these lockside cottages, once used by the lengthsmen, the chaps employed to maintain a particular length of canal. Some of these are now available for holiday lets. The only trouble with this bit of canal is that the locks are fairly evenly spaced out, so you never get a long bit of cruising. It's always a quarter or a half mile and then another lock. At least here fortune was on my side, as once again another boat had just descended, so the lock would be ready for me. Three locks down and heading up to my 4th of the day, and this was amazing. Another boat coming out just as I got there. Fantastic timing. Unbelievably, the same thing happened at the 5th lock as well. It never usually works out quite this spectacularly, but almost each lock was turning out to be set and open for me on approach. Here's another lengthsman's cottage, sold in 2014 for, wait for it, £1.2 million. It is bigger than it looks, with 4 bedrooms, 4 acres and a swimming pool, none of which I could see to film. Straight after that you have a tiny little aqueduct, just a few metres long. And then, guess what? A lock. And irritatingly, one that I actually had to go up and set. Actually, it is good exercise, really. Onwards through one of those random narrow bits you occasionally find on the canals. You do have to keep an eye out for these, as they can creep up on you without warning. My 7th lock was empty, but the gate needed opening, and a random woman who was standing there saw me approaching and opened it for me. I don't know if she was even a narrowboater. You just get a nicer class of people on the towpath sometimes, you really do. I was able to just bounce off the towpath where I'd started coming in to stop and carry on in. Where's all the sun gone, eh? This is Lowsonford, a popular spot as it has water and waste facilities. So far then, that's 7 locks done with relative ease. A lot of boats coming down and gates being left open for me and help and so on. I'd like to do about another 3 locks today. That'll be 10 of the 17, obviously leaving me 7 for tomorrow. Some people have amazing gardens on their boats. Approaching Lock 8, and right at the end of this armco there's a water point. There was a boat on it, which is fine of course, but only the water point had any mooring bollards to tie to for when you go ahead to set the lock. So if there's a boat using it, as there was here, you have nothing to tie your boat to, unless you can be bothered with chains round the armco, and that really is overkill when you're just stopping for the lock. It's a silly simple thing, but rather frustrating. Lock 9 then, and no such difficulties with these wooden posts to fling a line over. After the tightness of all the locks so far, this one was weird. It's not a wide lock, but it's definitely a wide, narrow lock with much more space than usual on either side of the boat. Were you to slip down the side here, you'd very likely be in trouble, as you'd end up in the water instead of catching on the gunnels as you might normally do. An unusual little boat was moored above. I always want to see inside tiny boats to see how they cram everything in. I can only assume Hansel or Gretel live here. At my 10th lock, I was back on good fortune again, with another boat coming out just in time. That is 10 locks down in 3 hours, and due to a multitude of other boats coming down, I was able to sweep majestically into most of the locks with a lot less effort than usual. You know, the gates were ready open, locks were emptied for me. It's all been terrific. So I was planning on pausing here and doing the last 7 tomorrow, and I must admit I'm now umming and ahhing about, while the going is good, maybe just completing the flight. Another 7 locks will take me a couple of hours. That would give me all day tomorrow just sitting on the boat lazing about, which sounds like a plan. And with that target in my mind, I set about executing it, here opening the gate at the 11th lock, which also features one of those little cottages. Run, fat boy, run! Lazy oaf. Isn't that virtually the definition of quaint? The 12th lock is disturbed by the incessant roar of the M40 motorway going overhead just beyond. I confess I was getting my skates on here somewhat selfishly, because all the locks were empty in my favour, and I knew there was a boat with crew coming behind me. Now I wanted the benefit of all the empty locks, so I didn't want to let those others past. Luckily, I somehow managed to keep pace ahead of them, probably because they had to re-empty each lock after I'd been up. Lock 13, no problems here, and I was now less than half a mile from the canal junction at Lapworth. Lock 14 sees another cottage, and there's this wonderful old metal sign next to the bridge over the canal. Lock 15, and once again some random passing boaters saw me coming, saw the lock was empty and opened the gates so I could just sweep straight in there. Into my 16th lock of the day, and a pleasant countryside view with sheep munching the grass in the field next door. Just one more lock to go and then I'd be at Kingswood Junction, where I'd take a sharp right. Here's the junction with a nice wide pound to make the slightly blind right turn a little easier. Let's go! A quick toot in case of traffic joining from the left, but all was okay, so straight on down the Lapworth Link, and underneath that pedestrian bridge right at the end is the turn onto the Grand Union canal. Left would be north, but I'm going right to the southeast. Time for another warning blast. You cannot see a thing coming out of here. It has just started to spit a little with rain, but I'm very near where I want to end up. I mean, to be honest, anywhere along here would be fine. All I want to try to find now is a little bit of canal bank with some of that metal armco to tie up against. At the moment I've got concrete banks, which I could do with pins and so on, but I prefer a bit of armco and using the chains if I can get away with it. So I'll carry on a little bit further. No sooner had I said that than a convenient stretch of armco presented itself, so I stopped here and tied for the night. Next time, it's the final cruise vlog and the Hatton flight with a special guest crew.